Hello YouTube on this particularly grey, dismal and very, very British Sunday morning. Universe Classics Acid Storm. Now, I'm not going to be reviewing Acid Storm in and of himself per se, rather I'm going to be reviewing the Seeker mould, which has been used many times, repainted and marginally restructured to represent different characters. Just as the Generation 1 Seeker mould was, you had the first generation Seeker Jets, which consisted of Starscream, Skywarp and Thundercracker. Then later on there was another series of 3 Seeker Jets who were they had slightly restructured wings and different colour schemes, who were Dirge, Thrust and Ramjet, who are actually my favourite of the Generation 1 Seeker moulds. I have to admit, I'm not a huge fan of that mould in general. It's not that it's terribly designed as such; it's adequate considering the constraints of the era. But they have so many detachable bits. Their wings come off, their fists come off, their weapons come off, and the weapons fire. And if you lose one of them, just one of those pieces, then what you have is an incomplete transformer, and it doesn't look right in either mode, which is frustrating. This mould, thankfully, obviously being much more up to date, fixes more or less all of those problems. We still have the rather annoying firing missiles. I could have definitely done without them. I would have preferred just a more traditional Seeker weapon, in the style of Starscream's Null Ray, perhaps, without the firing mechanism. The thing with firing missiles and Transformers, as I think many Transformers fans, King Lafo pointed it out in his pet peeves quite eloquently, you lose them. They have a nasty habit of firing on their own, and then some sort of gremlin or magic pixie comes along and eats them or spirits them away. You can never find them again. And some of them are actually integral to the look of the Transformer. These ones certainly are. If you lose these missiles, then it does not look right in either mode, and that is very frustrating. I would much prefer weapons that do not fire, and I think most Transformers fans would actually. But yes, this is a very beautiful, very beautiful mould indeed. Like most of the classics line representations of older characters or older moulds, this one is a perfect representation of how the Seekers appeared in the Generation 1 cartoon. Everything is wonderful. It's very proportionate. It's beautifully shaped, and there are details all over it. I don't know whether you can see on this camera, but the back is rife with sculpted and painted details, which is very lovely. Beautiful Decepticon symbols all over it as well. Those are very nice. Very little in the way of undercarriage kibble. Yeah, you can definitely see that that's going to do something, that it's going to transform into a robot or something to that effect. But as jet formers go, this is very sleek. Traditionally, jet transformers have this horrible habit of having an undercarriage. They have things slung underneath them like arms and legs, and they're very obvious. As an example, no, I haven't got one to hand at the moment, so I'll show you that later. But yes, this is reasonably sleek. The only real issue I have with it in this mould is the landing gear is very strange. Technically what it should have is one wheel that comes out here. What it has are these things here. They don't move, they don't actually roll. They're just sculpted wheels that fold out of the robot mode's torso. A very odd part of the robot mode's torso, actually. They form his nipples in robot mode. This guy is a hyper nipple master, apparently, which is very odd. Anyway, that very minor quibble aside, this is, for my money, barring the masterpiece Seeker mould, which has been used to make Starscream and Skywarp thus far, I believe, waiting for a Thundercracker, this is definitely the definitive Seeker mould. It's very playable. It's made out of very good plastic as well, which I'm quite surprised by. Some of the Classics line has a nasty habit of having very thin and very brittle plastic. This one, I haven't had that at all. It's got a slightly rubbery texture, which means that it won't snap, and also it can actually withstand quite a bit of damage and thrashing about before it will break. Anyway, onto the transformation. And there we have it. Now, I've got to make note of how this guy is designed. Oh, hang on, I haven't quite finished transforming the legs there because I'm an arse. There we are. Much better. I have to make note of this guy's transformation because it's rather ingenious. Rather than having all of the jet kibble either coming off or hanging all over him, his whole torso splits down the middle, and you split him in half, and a significant portion of the jet folds inside. Then you just close it back up again. It's a very, very economical way of dealing with extraneous bits, and also creating what is one of the most coherent robot modes I've seen of any Transformer. It just looks wonderful. It's the definitive Seeker Jet robot mode. And unlike the original Generation 1 Seeker Jets, whose wings attached somewhere down here so that they were actually on its legs rather than on its back, as depicted in the cartoon show and most of the comics, this one, its wings are in place on its back, and they look so much better for it. It's a very dynamic robot mode as well. The posability is, as you'd expect from a modern Classics line Transformer, fantastic. There are lots of ball joints and swivelly bits. His legs will bend in any which way you want. He's extremely posable. There is one very, very minor issue in this mode, a design problem. If you want to put his arms up so that his weapons face forward, the wing comes down, because the gun is actually too big to accommodate it. But very, 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 very minor concern. It's a stunning piece of work. The detail on it is beautiful, and I actually really coming back to Acid Storm in particular, I think this is one of the best colour schemes for the Seekers I have ever seen. It looks so good and so coherent and characterful. Oh yes, there's his nipples that become the landing gear. Very, very weird. Strange choice, Hasbro. Almost as odd as having the cockpit for Pretender Road Grabber essentially coming out of his crotch. I'm not sure. I get the impression that there are some design people at Hasbro having a bit of a laugh about, or getting all Freudian over it. Anyway, Universe Classics Acid Storm. Well worth picking up. You can get him reasonably cheap these days as well, because there's quite a lot of these flying about. He is definitely worth picking up. I'm going to actually buy, barring the various different variations of Starscream, I don't see the point in that. I'm only going to get one of those. But as long as they keep creating meaningful recolors and remolds of this guy, I will probably get them all. I would love to have a small armada of Seeker Jets sitting around somewhere, actually. I'd be very, very pleased with that. Anyway, there you are.